but it's going to be right to the emergency room. I can't cook. Do you understand? I can teach. I'm not very good at running a church bus. I'm not good at taking a van and running around picking people up for sure. Now, I do pick people up in the past, and I have, but I'm not very good at that. So, for instance, let's say you are called to be a synagogue leader, but you're not a very good speaker, or you're not a very good teacher. So then work on that area. Work on your weaknesses. Strengthen your strong points, but don't, let me read this. Strengthen your strong points, but don't burn yourself out on your weak points. Write it down. Strengthen your strong points, make them stronger, but don't burn yourself out on your weak points. You understand what I'm saying? Because sometimes we're so weak in an area that if we devote time to fixing the weaknesses, we don't emphasize our strengths. You understand? So if your strength is visiting the sick in the hospital and praying for the sick and ministering to the sick, going to nursing homes, then work on that strength, increase that ministry, increase the energy in that particular area. Don't try to do that or do an area that you're not strong. For instance, let's say the worship leader is not there, or let's say the worship team is not there. Don't try to take the microphone and start doing worship when that's one of your weaknesses. That's not one of the areas of your strengths. Have you ever done that? There's nobody to do worship. We don't like Paul Wilbur because there's too much Hashem and God. Come on. And you do the worship. And then you speak to your elder or your co-worker and you say, oh, if I don't do the worship, it's not going to be worship. And so see right there, because worship is not your strength, you do worship, or I do worship, and we're not moving in our strength. You understand what I'm saying? We're moving. So what do? Have a pattern developed, a guideline. If there is no worship, there'll be no worship. It's better to have no worship or no children's ministry than to have the children taught by someone who is not tested and haven't taught that that person is really Michael, that Yeshua is really Michael and not Yeshua. Michael the archangel. You follow me? So great ministries do a few things well. And work on your strengths. Don't hit yourself over the head on your weaknesses. You have certain gifts and you have certain strengths. Work on your strengths, not on your weaknesses. See, now, the world tells you the opposite. And religion tells you the opposite. Work, brother, you gotta work. No, you don't. Because you're never gonna cover all your weaknesses. You're never gonna fix all your weaknesses. You follow me? And neither am I gonna fix all my weaknesses. Right? So work on your strengths. Your strengths may be graphic design. You may be able to do more through graphic design than through teaching, which is not really your strength. So use graphic design to bring the word to your congregation. Use overheads, use PowerPoint presentations. Use computer animation. Do things that are related to your computer. Because you may be able to emphasize that strength rather than a weakness in another area. Don't burn yourself out over your weaknesses. Now, let me share this with you. When you try to do things that you're weak in, you know what you're doing? You're stopping the gift, somebody else's gift, from manifesting. If I try to do the coffee and the kitchen and the worship, and I'm doing the children and I'm doing everything, okay? then you know what I'm doing? There may be somebody there who has a gift, or there may be somebody there that has an ability to step forward, and I am holding them back because I'm trying to do everything, and I'm trying to cover my weaknesses, and I'm trying to compensate for my weakness. I'm not saying to ignore your weakness. I'm not saying that, okay? What I'm saying is delegate your weakness. Write it down, please. Delegate your weakness. Okay? Baruch Hashem Yahweh. I'd like to think of another example. Let's say you're not an overly, you're not an extrovert, you're an introverted person. And there could be congregation leaders that are introverted, they're not extroverted. That's possible. They tend to be introverted people. Okay, and you don't go to everybody or every visitor or every guest, new person who comes into your congregation and shake their hands. Hi, how are you? How's everything? You're not that. It takes a while for you maybe to warm up to people till you know them. Okay. So what do? You delegate your weakness. You put somebody at the door that has a big smile and hugs everybody when they come in. But you got to plan all these things in advance. Okay, next. Never stop. Quitting is a sign of losers. It is better to take time off when needed than to quit a work or a calling that Yahweh has given you. Never quit. You know when we retire from the ministry? When our last breath is gone. That's when we retire. Not 1 minute before that.
Hallelujah.
Never quit. 5 people, preach to the fishes. In the goldfish tank in your house, preach to the fishes. Do not, or teach, sing to the fishes, whatever your calling is. Quitting is a sign of losers. If you're really called, you cannot quit. And here's something I want you to understand. It is better to take time off than to quit. Okay, in my ministry, I can take 2 weeks off, no problem, with no loss of income. Praise to Yahweh for that. Yahweh's been very good to me. But I'd rather do that than quit on 60, 70 people and hundreds around the world that look to me and admire me. And if I were to quit, what would be the difference between me and Shabtai Tzvi, the false Messiah who converted to Islam? What would be the difference? No difference. Don't quit. People admire people who don't quit and see things to the end. They admire stick-to-itiveness. 90% of ability is stickability. You hear me? If you do this for 10 years, your group will grow. I don't care if you're meeting in a farmhouse or underneath a cow. Stickability is 90%. How do we get this congregation? Well, let's try 8 years of blood and sweat. Did I feel like quitting? Every Shabbat. Every Shabbat. Think of what it's like for your family to come to worship and all of a sudden there's a fight out in the parking lot. Is that the kind of Pesach you want for your family? Isn't it easier to stay home with you and your children and just have Pesach? But that's not what we're called. We can't do that. We can't do that. We're serving Yahweh's people and we're called to serve Him. Better to take time off like Yeshua did than give up. Next, I think I touched this before, so I'm going to go over this. Set healthy boundaries with people. Love them, be friendly as brothers and sisters, but have boundaries. Because you cannot tell the truth in love if your soul is tied to the person you shepherd. You hear what I'm saying? You cannot tell the truth in love to a person whose feelings you don't really want to hurt. And that is a major problem with congregations. They get so close to their sheep that you really can't say anything to them because you like these people. You don't want to hurt them. Okay? So you can't tell someone to be quiet or shut up when you're watching ball games with them 6 days a week. You can't do that. Be careful. Have healthy boundaries. Next, be accountable to other leaders or elders, either outside or inside your congregation, or to an outside counselor such as a marriage or family therapist. My philosophy is that everyone in this room, everybody who's a group leader or a synagogue leader should have a family therapist or a marriage counselor. Because let me tell you something. If that family in Tennessee had gotten marriage counseling, she wouldn't have shot him. There was other ways to deal with their issues. There were other ways to deal with their problems. Okay? And if husbands feel like shooting their wives, and wives feel like shooting their husbands, how much more for those of us who are in pressure in the ministry? We were under constant pressure. Right? People criticize your wife, people criticize your husband, what you wear, how your children behave, why you're chewing gum, why your head covering is really not a head covering. It's only half the head, it's not the full head. You're under the microscope, you cannot worship, you cannot pray without 50 eyes staring at you. You're under the microscope, you're under the bubble. You need an outlet. If you do not have another rabbi or an elder, or even, in my opinion, even better, a family therapist, a marriage counselor, I don't see you in ministry for long. You cannot do this yourself. You absolutely cannot do this yourself. Not only do you need to be accountable to other people who could say, you know, I hear what you're saying, but I respectfully disagree with you. And I think you should consider this option, and I think you should consider that option. You know, and like I tell everybody, Rivka and I, and when I was during the surgery, we stopped, and I said to Rivka, look, whether we need it or whether we don't need it, let's go back to our counselor, our family therapist, because we want to always have a place where we can cry or we can discuss issues, because you know something? If you don't discuss it, it's going to blow up and it's going to blow over. It's going to build up. And I've seen rabbis and pastors start fighting with their children or their spouses right in the congregation. Did it once and never going to do it again. People will never come back. They will never, ever come. Whatever you do, do not raise your voice. Try not to raise your voice to your family, to your wife, your children in the congregation. Do your disciplining at home, because they'll take that and turn it against you. Instead of you being a good father or a good mother or whatever, they'll take it and they'll turn it against you. Make sense?
Yes.
Okay. I would recommend everyone who is a leader at B'nai Yeshua synagogues worldwide to have an outside counselor, a guidance counselor, who must be a Bible believer, a therapist, be accountable. Every leader and leadership family should receive ongoing counseling, as this provides an outlet to vent your frustrations and be real in your struggles. Next, in doctrine, major on the majors and don't major on the minors. Okay? What are the majors? The blood of Yeshua, the deity of Yeshua, the Moadim, the Shabbat, the true names of Yahweh and Yeshua. Don't make big issues about other issues such as tongues, prophecy. Should the head be fully covered, partially covered? Major on the majors. Also, on the other hand, don't flinch when you're pressured. You know, Rabbi Law, listen, we could reach more people if we do Saturday and Sunday. Don't flinch. Shabbat is the Shabbat. Listen, if we do Pesach and we do the Lord's Supper on Sunday, we could be a lot more effective and we could reach a lot more people. Don't flinch. Shabbat, Moadim, pick your battles as a leader. Pick your battles. Be very careful. One thing that everybody should, in my opinion, should do is to make the deity of Yeshua a line in the sand. For those of you who are like Yosef in Latin America, there is no more messianic faith. All the false prophets and all the false apostles are running around all over Latin America persuading people that Yeshua is not Yahweh manifest in the flesh. Right? You guys probably have the same problem in Brazil, everywhere. It's a plague. So make sure you know where to draw your line. Have a few doctrines that you're willing to fight about. Don't fight over everything. Pick your battles. Next, remember I told you I'm going to throw a lot of things here at you. Devote all your work, time to the ministry. Now this is a little controversial, but I'm right. And I know that I'm right through experience. Devote all your work, time to the ministry. How many hours a day do you have to work? Do you have available? 8 hours, 10 hours, right? Whatever you work. Don't do any other work. I don't care if you can't pay the bills. I don't care if you can't make ends meet. You're working now and you're not making ends meet. So if you stop working, what's going to be the difference? I'm talking about if you have a real calling to be a congregational leader. And I've shared this with many, many conferences in front of hundreds of people. Not one can contradict me. You may not understand it, and it may not sit right with you, but you cannot contradict it. And that is this: in the Bible, there is not one person that held a job, a secular job, and served Yahweh full-time or part-time. Name one. Well, Paul made tents. No. He made talits, and it wasn't like, Yahweh, listen, I know you want me to go to Macedonia, but I can't right now because I have a retail store and I have to sell some talits. But next Sunday, and there's a break in my schedule, I'll fly into Macedonia. No. He obeyed Yahweh first. He did the work of the ministry first. And then when he had free time, he sold talits. You want to work? It should only be when you have nothing to do. Not the other way around. And until you adopt that philosophy, you're going to go nowhere fast in ministry. Until me and Rivka stepped out on that seat and walked by faith, we didn't have a proverbial you-know-what. We had nothing. Telemarketer. I don't remember what she was doing. Different things from waitressing to working at Kmart for $3 an hour. That's who we are. We're working people. We're working people. We always were working people. We don't have any silver spoons, except the ones we find in the kitchen here. But there's not one person who received the call to preach, teach, and serve Yahweh's people that held a part-time job. Not one. Name one. I'll give you $500 right now. I'll cover your airfare. Once Moshe heard the call, he was full-time. Right? Once Joshua heard the call, he was full-time. Why? You can't ask your people to walk in faith when you're not walking in faith. Now, I'm not condemning you if you have to work. I'm saying if you are a congregational leader, you can't be working. That means you have nothing to do. That means you're not available to people. Now, and I know that's difficult to understand. Bivocationalism when you're serving Yahweh in the congregational leadership position should only be undertaken if there is no choice, but have a little faith. Can Yahweh provide for you? Of course he can. One thing you should never do, now I know this is not going to, as a Nazarene Israelite congregation or synagogue, never meet in a church. Because you're not just saying, I have no faith, you're saying Yahweh cannot provide. Do not meet, you think Yahweh cannot give you a store or a warehouse? We're sending a wrong message if we meet in a church. You follow what I'm saying? Get out of the church and get your own plans. You're confusing people. You're saying the church is wrong about this, this, and this, but you're using their facilities for your services. If they're so wrong, where's your moral conviction? Okay. Again, I emphasize this through the word and experience. If, that's a big if. I'm not talking about the worship leaders. I'm not talking about those who serve on tables. I'm not talking about you have to work. If you don't work, you're worse than an infidel, and you've denied the faith. The Bible says you're not an infidel, you're worse than an infidel. Right? You have to work. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about rabbis. You can call yourself a rabbi, you better be able to go full-time right away. I know that flies against everything you've ever been taught, but that's okay, because that's the way the kingdom works. Yeshua said to Kepha, step out on the water. He said, all my life I've been fishing in these waters. I know I'm going to drown. Yeshua said, step out. You want to fail in the ministry? Go to work. Get 2 jobs. Get 3 jobs. That's the devil's way of suffocating you so you have no time to do your call. Okay, display, and this should be self-obvious. Display and demand a healthy pattern of tithing in the assembly, so financial curses don't hold back Yahweh's work or Yahweh's will. Listen, this is obvious, right? I mean, we don't need to be rocket scientists to figure this out, okay? I used to think that I was a very spiritual person, and I was not. When my first couple of congregations, I had no faith. I rented from churches. I didn't think people would tithe. I didn't want them to tithe. So I saw this thing on the Azusa Street Revival in Los Angeles, and I wanted to mimic what I saw. So I took a Maxwell House coffee can, and maybe a few different coffee cans, and I followed William Seymour from the Azusa Street Revival, and I put the coffee can in the corner near the entrance. What a fool I was. And I put a sign on top of the coffee can, settle with gold, thinking that people would actually pay their tithes into a coffee can without me teaching the Torah. You know, oh brother, it's just a home fellowship. You can't stick a basket under their nose. You can't. Why? Tithing isn't in the Torah. Make a long story short, Yahweh is my witness, and Rebbetzin Rivka, I can't see her, but she'll shake her head to confirm what I'm saying. Every person in my first 2 congregations, almost 14 years ago, 15 years ago, more, every person was broke and unemployed. And you know whose fault it was? Because I was putting a financial curse on those people. Yahweh's my witness. Maybe 1-2 person out of 30 worked. Because I thought I was so spiritual. I had the coffee can. Settle with, like somebody's going to really stick $1,000 into a coffee can.
They still have financial problems.
And they still have financial problems, these same people. Now that I think back, I wouldn't stick $1,000 in a coffee can hanging on a wall with Scotch tape, would you? I mean, the coffee can's this big, you can barely hold the check. I was a fool. Don't be a fool. Hey, Rabbi, you know, I hear what you're saying, but these people have no money. Stick a basket under their nose. Wait a second. I hear what you're saying, but we're in our living room right now. We're not paying rent. We don't have any overhead. If you don't start sticking a basket under their nose, you're going to be in that living room in 30 years. Shove it under their nose. And if they're not giving, pass it around again. Get these people out of their financial curse. Please, I'm telling you. Next, never be afraid to say you were wrong. Be real and be yourself. Don't mimic anyone or anyone's ministry. Be an original. I had a problem when I got started. And one of the things I used to do is I would mimic Jimmy Swaggart.